Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the Health or High Water podcast. I am your host, Trip Parks. Unfortunately, Brett Hutari is training today. He is unable to make the podcast, so I'm back at the helm doing some interviews here. So with someone amazing here I'm going to introduce. I got a few announcements to make first. First and foremost, we have a few new countries enter the fold. Thank you so much, China, for the downloads. Norway, thank you. Sweden, thank you so much, as well as Argentina entered this past week. So thank you guys so much for joining the Health or High Water fam. We've got an amazing podcast today. If you guys are in Denver, we've got some amazing Christmas deals on our genetic testing and our health profiling. You guys go check out www.ascendperformancetraining.com. If you're interested in more detail without talking to me first, I get it. We got a blog on there too. Go check that out. Without further ado, I am really excited about this podcast. We have our first dog in the studio, which I'm so ecstatic. As soon as you told me the dog was coming, I was like, oh my, this is the best. I went right to Brett. I was like, oh my God.
And she's settling down now. She's laying, so we're all ready.
We're all ready to go?
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, I have Catharine Fortino here. Mm-hmm. She is a sports performance and nutrition coach over at Primal. She was a registered dietitian for 3 years and went to Michigan State University for dietetics. Mm-hmm. Go Sparty, and one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, Kirk Cousins, went to your school.
Fantastic favorite quarterback. Love that guy.
There you go. There you go. But I saw you on LinkedIn, had to get to know a little bit more about you. You had quite the eclectic background. I mean, you were over at CU for a little while. Mm-hmm. And then I found your profile. You have something about U.S. law.
Weightlifting.
U.S. Oh,
yeah.
I was like, you just got a law degree too? Dang.
I wish.
Well, so tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into wellness. What's your backstory?
Yeah, so I got my undergrad at Michigan State, so grew up in Michigan, did all of my schooling there. After getting my bachelor's, I did my master's at Grand Valley State, which is a smaller state college. And then after finishing all of that and passing my registration exam, I knew that I wanted to get out of Michigan. So and I love Michigan. I love Michigan very much, but I was excited to live somewhere new. So I had some friends out in Colorado, moved out on my own, and yeah, I started, I thought I was going to be clinical, but while I was looking for a clinical position, had a friend recommend I try out personal training because I loved being in the gym, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. Worked with one-on-one training for a while, moved to a Lifetime Fitness where I was also doing the transformation coaching through Ann Shoot. So that was like a virtual education class that I was holding. Okay. Yeah. And then from there, I moved into Primal Performance because as I was in the health and wellness space and doing that, I realized that I really wanted to work with athletes and see what that was all about. And I'm not looking back.
I love it. Once you're like around that kind of competition, it's hard to get away from it. It's kind of addicting.
It definitely is, yeah. And it's just really cool. We work with predominantly youth athletes, so mostly middle school and high schoolers, and we have some collegiate athletes too. And even I've been there for almost 2 years, and it's such a unique population because they're changing so much. And so even to see all of the changes and the growth that's happened with athletes that have like been with me throughout that entire time, it's just so cool. They are becoming full humans, and it's just a very unique experience.
That's the most rewarding part about youth athletics, right? Is watching them turn into little adults.
Yeah.
Little adults, and you're there to help them, guide them, and teach them how to be healthy. And a good tangent here actually for that is what I really liked about what you do is you're not just a personal trainer, you're also a nutritionist, and those two together are so important as part of what we do here. Tell me a little bit about how, working with this kind of elite level youth sports, nutrition plays such a big part in these kids' development as well as their growth into adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with the nutrition background, it's different, right? A lot of the people that I work with are all like exercise science backgrounds. So I think just in general with coaching, I bring a different perspective having that piece of nutrition. And I'm really lucky owner, Harry Glore, who I work with, is really supportive of the nutrition side of things too. And he's really invested in that, which is awesome. Because I don't think that it always gets enough emphasis. And we talk about it a lot, like how are we going to improve your performance if we're like not eating well, not sleeping well.
Right.
And those are habits that these are teenagers that'll take that to college, whether they want to be playing sports in college or not. But to understand how we build out a plate, how we time out our nutrition, and like why those things matter, it's really cool to think that you're setting someone up for a long time. Like those are things that will stay with them.
No, I love that because did you kind of get that idea of being a transformational coach at Lifetime that like started to be like, hey, like it's not just about a 6-week bikini competition here. This is about lifestyle change and making sure that we are, again, trying to make these best decisions for these the youths.
The youths. Yeah. I definitely think Lifetime was a very important place for me to be and work in, because that was a huge staff. That was a staff of like 30 trainers. So it was crazy. But
Hard pass for me.
No, I've met some of my best friends there though. Like I feel very grateful for that staff, and I really enjoyed working there. But it was really important career-wise too, because I had just been practicing for about 1.5 years before I started there. And going to Lifetime is a huge like business that has these big systems and all of these resources available and all these people with years and years of experience. It definitely, and then a couple years into my career journey, seeing what the short-term focus yielded people versus the long-term focus. And so it was like seeing that over and over again. And you're just like, yeah, these like short-term challenge, 21 days, 75 hard. Sorry if you like 75 hard, but
I feel the same way.
There's pros and cons to all of it. And I just think that it definitely motivated me to look at really what's the long-term solution.
You are just preaching to the choir here.
Perfect.
You found the right podcast. So that's awesome, because it really is about that for us being trainers. It's not about, hey, listen, I want to get you a 6-pack here. I really want to see you like thrive, even if you're not working with me. Mm-hmm. You know, these kids going off to college, possibly going to the gym instead of going to a party, or choosing to sleep in and whatnot instead of going out like, hey, listen, this is affecting my endocrine system and affecting my diet, and it's all kind of relative. So I absolutely love that. So when you're starting bringing someone on, what are some important factors that you look for when you're doing intake and trying to build a program for someone?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I definitely have a base questionnaire and things that I'm looking through, but being at Lifetime, at most of the positions I've worked at, most of the facilities, I'm the only dietitian on staff. And so I see like everything.
We're rare.
Yeah. So what I'm looking for is, I really want to get an understanding of first like goals. And I always ask long-term and immediate, and then also what it means to achieve those goals. And then looking at too, a lot of our history is so important. What we've done in the past, what we've liked, what we don't like. I am notorious for doing incredibly long evals because I just really want to be as detail oriented as possible. And I definitely just get asking, and we'll be like, oh, tell me more about that, and tell me more about that. So I think that I really cast like a wide net when I'm doing those. And so I look initially for goals, short-term, long-term, looking at any kind of experience they've had with nutrition coaching in the past. And then based off of that, we lead to conversations on injury history, any kind of chronic diseases. There's a lot of layered disordered eating, anything like that. And so those things kind of all come up out of the woodwork as we're having those conversations.
Yeah, that intake is such an important tool for us as health and wellness professionals, is to truly understand like what's going on with people. And I was in corporate wellness for a while, and I worked for, I'm not going to say that. Well, I might have said it already on this podcast. Like, this might be the 100th episode that you're on. So if so, we might have a little special for it. But I worked for a corporate gym. Excuse me, this pre-workout just hit.
He did a dry scoop before this interview. Yeah.
just right to the dome.
Yeah.
But when I was GM for this company, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going through this meeting about intake and how do you process that, and it was a sales orientated intake instead of an educational oriented intake. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the meeting, they called people units. It's like, you should be moving this many units. And I was like, a chill went up my spine, and I was like, it's not why I got into this.
Right.
And lo and behold, this holistic idea of actually understanding what's going on with someone is the right way to do it. So I love that you're thorough. That intake process should take us longer than it needs to, because we're uncovering stuff that needs to be uncovered, and injuries and diet problems and all sorts of stuff. We become everybody's personal therapist as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes. So being here in Denver, you were here pre-COVID.
Yes, right before.
So tell me a little bit, because I've had my own experience with it. Tell me a little bit about how Denver was pre-COVID with health and wellness, and what was going on during COVID, and what you're seeing kind of change now that it's over with.
I think I moved out in April of 2019. So I got just a year in.
Fresh.
Yeah, very fresh when everything shut down. And I was working at a gym at the time. And I think ultimately Denver is resilient when it comes to health and wellness, because I remember during that time, so many people were so concerned with, how do I get to the gym and how do I keep this going? And I think that it was the year of and the year following COVID, as someone who was doing personal training at the time and I was relying on those sales metrics, it was really difficult. I think that it really changed the landscape for us as trainers. So many people went virtual, but ultimately I think that it was a lot of solution finding. People found ways to still reach their clients they were working with. Most trainers took people out to parks, people were doing anything they could. And I think that made me feel so positive about staying in the industry, was that people still wanted it. And that was huge. And now coming back full circle, it's definitely different now. I think that in general, there are a lot more resources that are virtual or remote. But ultimately, I think that Colorado remains a place that really thrives on group atmospheres and community. Yeah. And I don't think that piece has been lost.
No, I have to wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Living in so many different states in the past 5 years, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, I was surprised to see how upset Coloradans were when gyms were closed.
Yes.
What am I going to do? It's like, we can't even run outside, and it was crazy. So it's nice to see not just how resilient it was, but how more important I'd say now it is to Coloradans stay healthy. It's like, well, I'm not taking that for granted again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I had to buy bands from Amazon and they sucked.
Yeah. Everyone was like, please, I need the weights. My clients and myself included, when I was at that gym, it was a smaller one up in Arvada, and so the trainers could go in, work out there. So we had that resource, but the clients, it really changed. You see the effect of not having that resistance training and having to, try to motivate them the best you can to do workouts by themselves in their homes. And that's hard. That's really hard. A big part of fitness is that it is a social aspect to it that you really just can't replicate.
Well, yeah. And as trainers, it's funny. I was having a conversation about this, not this week, but last week, about how intertwined we are in people's lives, right? Some of us see our clients more than we see their spouses.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Or interact with, interaction time,
right.
Not necessarily, overall time. But next thing you know, we're getting invited to weddings and birthday parties and all these kind of things become intertwined in life, is because, we are trying so hard to be that helpful person, and we spend so much time with that person. So what I want to ask is, I want to kind of take a backtrack to younger you.
Okay.
About sports you did when you were youth.
And when I was a youth.
Did you?
Yeah.
about how this passion came about. Your love for the gym. So tell me about young Catherine, and the sports you used to play, and what made you fall in love with the gym.
Yeah, I think it's just like everything else. It's kind of like non-directional for quite a while. But growing up, I was incredibly invested in POM, I started when I was younger in like dance and gymnastics. And then through middle school and high school, the Midwest version of POM is kind of like cheer meets dance. Like we're not chanting, but we're a little more rigid. We'd have the kick line.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was very into that. And then in the spring, I always ran track, which I've always loved sprinting. And so I did both of those throughout high school. When it came to my senior year of high school, I was just a teenager who didn't really like my track coach, so I decided not to run that year. And that was the first time I got a gym membership on my own. And I started working out when I was like 18. And so there was like this underlying layer of throughout undergrad and all of those things, I always really loved the gym. But I always thought at first that I went into Michigan State to pursue psychology. I took a class on I had to do like a volunteer event or credit. And I was in this classroom in the community, and there was this young girl who had diabetes. And I remember she had no idea, like the teacher was having a hard time. No one knew how to control her insulin. No one knew what they were doing. The continuous pumps weren't as popular then. And so it was just one of those moments where I was like, wow, like no one really has like a solution to this. And so when I started looking more into it and how maybe I could play a role in helping with something like that, my first interest in dietetics was community-based. Yeah, so seeing like what I could do in the community, started volunteering in food bank, stuff like that, really loved it. But then like my senior year, fell in love with clinical nutrition and studying that and all the science behind that. And so when I picked my grad program, I picked a clinical dietetics grad program, thinking again I was going to go into the hospital. And then again, once I moved out here, it like shifted again, where it was like, oh, but you can actually combine these two things that you really enjoy studying and learning about and doing as a hobby, and like wrap it all together and get to work with the community and people and like intervene in a different way. So I guess it felt very non-directional at certain points, but in the end, it kind of all tied together.
It's weird how life does that.
Yeah.
Like it's really weird how you wake up one day, you're like, do I live in Colorado?
I just hit 5 years. I was like, what? When? How did that happen?
No, it's so I actually moved out the same year you did.
Oh, okay.
In 2019, and it was such a weird culture shock of like just getting used to a new place to live that's like so far away. But yeah, I mean, it's so while the dog is moving around, we talk about the dog real quick.
Okay.
We've got our first dog in the studio here, Mo, right?
Yep. Shout out Momo.
Tell me a little bit about how you got Mo and what health and wellness benefits we might be seeing already from having a dog.
Oh my gosh. Happiness is through the roof most of the time. No, she's been great. I this past January started volunteering at Dumb Friends League, which is a adoption center in Denver. And if you don't know about it, you should definitely check it out. I really love the organization, and I wanted to do something outside of health and fitness because I had kind of like my whole life had kind of become this one realm. And right. I was like, let me get back to some things that I really care about that I'm not putting time into. And that would be like, I used to volunteer a lot and wasn't doing that. And I love animals. So that was like, started doing that. And one day I walked in and I saw this beautiful older lady, this nice German Shepherd sitting in her kennel. And I just fell in love with her right away. So I just got her back in July. And she's been a great learning experience for me. I've only ever had cats. So I didn't tell you that part. Yeah, this is my first dog. Yeah. And so I feel very lucky. She's definitely a dog and gets into things sometimes and causes some problems, but ultimately very lucky. She's been a pretty easy dog.
Well, I know that's hard typically. I would much rather prefer to adopt, kind of younger, older age dogs. They're typically a little more well-behaved and what have you, but you also don't know if they're the potty training and what kind of bad habits that they have and have to untrain that is hard. So it sounds like you so sorry about that. It sounds like you have had at least a decently easy experience so far with Mo?
Yeah, she's been really good. Like we learned how to have her not get car sick every time she was in the car. And we're pretty good now. We're good.
Okay.
And she's still like warming up. Like you saw when she came in, she's a little bit timid sometimes, but she's like, the warm up period is getting shorter.
Yeah.
And she's so sweet and quiet. Like she was completely potty trained, doesn't mess up her kennel, anything like that. So like there were so many good things. And I didn't even answer your question about like the health benefits, but it's great to get outside and walk all the time. That is a true health benefit. I never just like walked around my neighborhood or anything like that. And it's so nice.
Well, it's funny you said it because we actually, was it 3 or 4, maybe 5 episodes ago? I guess it doesn't really matter. If you guys want to go back, there's an episode. I don't know if you know someone called, her name's Mindy Jarvis.
That sounds familiar.
She works at Pawco, I think. I think they're affiliates with Dumb Friends League.
Okay, maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think she does. She like raises money for local shelters in the area.
Okay.
But we had a podcast on about the similarities of conditioning between dog training and human training. Mm-hmm. It was like really fascinating how like exactly similar. There's like no difference between how we train ourselves versus how we train dogs. Yeah. So as a trainer yourself, has it been easier to train your dog because you kind of know what conditioning is and you know what consistency is supposed to look like?
I hope so. I hope I'm doing a good job.
You seem to be doing a great job.
Yeah, she's pretty, like I said, I do feel like I have to give her a little bit of a credit. But I think that, especially working at the shelter too, I waited a long time to get a dog because I wanted to make sure I was like in a good place for it.
Right.
And I don't even know if I 100% was, but it happened. And we've been learning from each other. And I think that I'm a much more patient person than I was a few years ago. And I think that's huge. And so with any of the training and even with the conditioning, like I have kind of let her lead a little bit. Like we have like our set walks that we go for. And sometimes I let her pick if we like go left and keep walking or like go right and go back home. And she's definitely month over month. One of the things was she was really underweight when I first got her, and she still is thin, but she's been gaining weight, and she just learned how to play fetch last week.
Oh.
So she's finally like full running for the first time. So it has been really progressive. And I think that's the best way. Like I never just started by making her run all the time. The first month she slept a lot.
She probably didn't feel comfortable. She was, in a kennel and didn't get good sleep and was stressed out. And like you said, she was thin,
Yeah.
So poor dog. Well, good on you, and God bless you for taking care of such a sweet, sweet dog. So, back to your job at Primal. So this is where you're currently at right now. You're right down the road from us.
Yes.
Working with youth athletes, some collegiate, right?
Yes.
Now, with those collegiate athletes, are they in the area, like DU, those kind of places, or is that like online?
So most of the athletes we have are at out-of-state colleges. We have one at an in-state college. I always get the Colorado universities messed up, but I want to say Mesa. But because we're pretty ingrained in the Northfield community, we mostly have athletes that train with us at some point in time during high school, and then we'll go off to college. So a lot of those athletes are going out of state for college. We have quite a few on the East Coast. But we do have some, we have the one here, and we also then kind of have them bring back their friends sometimes if they grew up here, or even on like a break if their friends are visiting. So we do get connected to quite a few college athletes through that too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because moving out here, I was surprised with how many colleges and universities are in this area.
Yes.
It's a lot. Because when I was in North Carolina, Raleigh, you had like Wake Forest, and you had like 4 or 5, maybe 6 within that corridor. But here, they're all in one spot.
Yeah, there's so many, and then they're all in like very far out, like isolated places in Colorado too. But those universities are so popular because some people just want to be out in the mountains and like be closer to that lifestyle. So yeah, there's a lot of universities in the state.
Especially just in this Denver area, it's absolutely insane. So do you see any difference, coming from Michigan, like mostly sea level state, do you see a difference in training here with the altitude?
I think that the like personal, like how my training is. Okay. Yes, there's definitely a difference. I remember when I first moved here, there's an adjustment period. My first couple of years, I hiked a lot too. And I remember my first 14er, I did Albert, which if you don't know, that's like the tallest one. And that was a bad choice to do for my first one. And
milk was a bad choice.
Yeah, no, bad choice. It definitely plays a role. And I feel like my conditioning is so much better. And when I go back home, I can just jog. I don't jog here, but I can go home and jog and be okay. And yeah, so you can absolutely feel a difference. And we have a lot of athletes too who grow up here, live here their whole lives, go off to college for a semester and come back. And if we only get 2 weeks with them, it's kind of hard because the altitude is really hard for them to readjust to.
That's exactly what I was going to get at, because you said you had some people coming back. It must be kind of crazy. They, go to South Carolina or whatever and come back here and they're like...
Yeah. They go to their first speed session and they're like outside trying to get some fresh air. And they're like, I just finished my season. I'm like, yeah, it's just different.
It's 100. Well, it's so funny to say, because when I was playing football, I had those oxygen deprivation masks, and I tried to do sprint. I did sprint trials with them. I was like, hey, this is great. So I brought it with me here, and I tried to do a sprint session with it on, and I was ripping it off, rolling on the grass, gasping for air. I was like, this was such a dumb idea. What?
You're like, it's already oxygen deprived.
So you guys even more? No, there's too much. There's a little bit too much. So I know we're getting kind of winding down here. We try to stick it around 30-minute episodes for car ride purposes, normal commute time. But I like to ask, especially with someone who is as well-rounded as you, as a personal trainer and a nutritionist and performance coach, is where do you see health and wellness going here in the next few years? What kind of trends are you seeing?
I think the biggest trend, and this probably picked up closer to COVID times even, but wearables are huge. I think technology is huge, and that's just going to continue to be integrated more, especially if you're looking at higher level programs. Utilizing recovery information, having those testing metrics easily available for athletes, and knowing how to interpret and use that data. I think that that's huge. And ultimately, I don't think it can take us away from what we do on the human side of things, but I think a lot more data, a lot more technology, and using that to really just fine-tune training.
I have to agree, because we really work in a fragmented market when everything should be put together.
Yeah.
Everything works together. If your diet sucks, your sleep's going to suck, your workout's going to suck, your focus is going to suck. They all interchangeable, work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I like to give everybody a plug here about where they can find you. Let's say they want to train with you, they want to find Primal, they might want to find some pictures of Mo.
That's what people should really be looking for, honestly. Yeah. I think that I can give you my Instagram and information and stuff like that, but I have my Instagram, which is just Cat Fortino. There'll be some weightlifting performance stuff on there and plenty of pictures of Mo as well. And I'm at Primal Performance up here outside in the Stapleton area in Denver. And we train predominantly youth athletes, but also we have our adult fitness as well. Anything performance or nutrition related, I'm happy to chat about, reach out to anyone for. And yeah, you can also, if you want, just like Trip, you can find me on LinkedIn too. But you have to be able to spell Catharine right, which is the hardest part. Because it's 2 A's. So
you better remember that.
Yeah, there you go.
I will tag all of your information in the copy below this podcast that you're listening to right now. But it is such a pleasure to have you and Mo on this podcast. We'll have to have you guys come back on and next season and see how Mo's adjusting and see how you guys are doing over at Primal. But thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have to have you back on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll definitely have to do a yearly Mo update.
100%. Well, thank you guys so much for watching the Health or High Water podcast. Please subscribe, share. Please tell your cousins, friends, best friends, uncle, second roommate, squirrel, just anything that you guys can do to help grow this podcast. We're now in 55 different countries right now. We're on thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of downloads. Jeez Louise, I need a nap. But thank you guys so much for liking and subscribing and rating us. We're part of the top 50% of growing podcasts right now. It's because of you guys, the listeners, and as well as amazing guests like you, Catherine, coming on and sharing your guys' experience. So thank you guys so much for listening, liking, subscribing, sharing, and being a part of this family. Peace!